What reprisal is when someone is punished, essentially, for claiming something or raising alarm bells about health and safety, for example. If you make a complaint about your manager, for example, and within a few days you're terminated, you potentially have a claim for reprisal, and that is essentially being punished for raising your voice, for ringing the alarm bells. Being punished, that is protected, and you shouldn't be punished just because you have voiced a concern about a health and safety issue. That is including bullying and harassment. And if this is from a manager, what you should do is document it in writing first for yourself. This is important. When you're bullied and harassed, the first thing to do is write down the date of when something happened and what, in fact, actually happened. That's the first step. The second step is to submit that to either your manager or their manager, if your manager is, in fact, the person who is a bully. If you do that, then your employer has an obligation to investigate those issues. They have to investigate the other side, who you're complaining about, and as well as they have to speak with you about what has happened. You have to also think about what you are being called. If you're being called something that is racist in nature, or something that is only attributed to a certain race or a certain gender, that is also a human rights discrimination potentially for someone to be calling you names that are related to gender, race, etc. But if you did and nothing was done about it, that actually makes your claim that much stronger. This is for WD. If you did, then what would happen is you'd have a stronger claim, more damages when this goes through. And unfortunately, these are the sorts of things that you need a lawyer for, because, regular people who don't go through bullying and harassment or terminations every day don't know what detail is important to add. But the addition of a detail that you did in fact complain, and saying when you complained about it, when you filed that complaint. The interesting thing is you don't have to officially file a complaint. If you just express it to your manager or your manager's manager that there is bullying and harassment happening, the test for the employer is either they have known or ought to have known, meaning either they knew or they should have known based on the evidence. So let's say you walk into your manager's office and you are crying one day. That is enough for them to actually investigate and ask you the reasons for why you're crying, what has happened. I mean, as long as you don't lie to them and you don't hide facts, that would stop them from investigating it further and digging into the proper reasons why these things happened. Then this would be an important fact for you to add, that the employer or managers didn't necessarily know, but they ought to have known. So any regular person would assume and understand that someone who is in fact getting bullied and harassed, who may be crying, is for a reason that it has happened, and that's why they are in their office. So that is important to add. In fact, every little detail of them refusing to investigate and refusing to act adds more to why you may be entitled to money versus not. Some people are, in fact, they're not trouble, but they do sometimes exaggerate certain events. And if someone, for example, came into the office and didn't say good morning to them, they'd consider that bullying and harassment. That is hard to prove, and that is not, in fact, something that a judge would agree with. If someone looks at you wrong, quote unquote, to wrong, that may be something that is also not really considered bullying and harassment. But it's also contextual. So the more you tell your lawyer about what happened, the more you describe the events. If, for example, you walk into the lunchroom and normally everyone's talking and they're talking, and then as soon as you walked in, they stop and they start looking at you weird, well, that is more than just you having a feeling that there's something wrong. This is potentially more valid. So I would encourage you to share these details with whoever is helping with your case.